This is the brief on Wallace Hartley and the Titanic. So let's picture it. It's April 1912 on the unsinkable Titanic. A 33-year-old musician named Wallace Hartley is about to make a choice that, completely defines courage. First, the turning point. At 11:40 p.m., the ship hits an iceberg. As you can imagine, panic is breaking out. People are running for the lifeboats. But Hartley, the band leader, who's actually engaged to be married, he does something different. He gathers his musicians and instructs them to play music, all to keep the passengers calm. Second, you have to imagine the scene as the ship is actually sinking. The water is rising, the deck is tilting, and the band switches from playing happy dance music to a very solemn hymn. It's believed to have been "Nearer, My God, to Thee." And they just stood their ground, right there, as the ship was literally breaking apart. It was an incredible act of courage for everyone perishing in that freezing water. And finally, the aftermath. Wallace Hartley did not survive. His body was recovered weeks later, and thousands attended his funeral back in England. They honored him as a hero, not for fighting the disaster, but for choosing calm over chaos in the face of death. So really, Wallace Hartley teaches us that true bravery is just staying calm and doing your job, even when you are afraid. In the end, his music lasted longer than the ship itself.
So I want you to picture this. It's April 14th, 1912.
Late at night.
Right, nearly midnight. And you're on the deck of, the largest moving object ever built by human hands. The air it's just freezing. But then the vibration under your feet stops.
The whole world just goes quiet.
Yeah, the hum of those massive engines just cuts out.
And in that silence, before the screaming starts, before the panic really sets in, a group of men make a decision that is, I think, one of the most baffling and beautiful moments in the history of human psychology.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we aren't talking about rivets or watertight bulkheads or any of the navigational errors that happen on the bridge of the Titanic.
No.
We are doing something a little different. We're going to listen to the tragedy.
We're focusing strictly on the soundtrack of the disaster. Specifically, we're unpacking the story of Wallace Hartley and his band. We've got a stack of sources here: survivor testimonies, biographies, and some really fascinating analysis on crowd psychology under duress.
And the mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. It's not just a what happened. It's more of a behavioral question, isn't it?
It is.
When the ship is sinking and your brain is just screaming at you to survive, which is, the most primal instinct we have.
Of course.
Why do you unpack a cello? Why do you stand still on a tilting deck and play a waltz?
That is the core mystery, isn't it? It's a study of duty versus instinct.
Yeah.
And to really get it, we have to strip away the movie version of the Titanic,
Romance, the big dramatic moments.
Exactly. And look at the sensory reality of that night.
Okay, so let's start there. The atmosphere. Because we know the ending. I think we assume the whole night must have felt dangerous.
Like there's some ominous music playing in the background already.
Yeah, but the sources we have, they emphasize the exact opposite. It was almost aggressively peaceful.
Aggressively peaceful is a great way to put it. The source material highlights this thing called normalcy bias. The passengers were on the unsinkable ship.
Right, it's a floating palace.
You've got the wealthiest men in the world, John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, just sipping brandy in the smoking room. And the sea, it was described as being like a mill pond.
Flat, calm.
Utterly flat.
And that calm, ironically, that was a huge part of the problem, wasn't it?
It was the fatal flaw in the weather conditions, yeah. Without waves breaking against the base of the iceberg, creating that white foam.
Lookouts can't see it.
They're basically blind. They couldn't see the ice until it was, literally right on top of them. But that calm also fed into the psychological state of everyone on board. When the collision happened at 11:40 p.m., it wasn't this cinematic, ear-shattering crash.
One of the survivor accounts we read describes it as tearing calico, just a ripping sound.
Another one called it a long, cold scratch.
So if you're in first class, you might not have even spilled your drink.
You probably wouldn't have, so you have this massive disconnect. The engineering reality is that the ship has just received a mortal wound. 5 compartments are flooding. But the sensory reality for the passengers is, nothing much has changed, maybe a little vibration.
And this is where that silent threat comes in.
Yeah.
The water didn't come crashing down the hallways.
Not like in the movies, no. It seeped in. Quietly. Relentlessly.
You have a gap between the actual danger, which is, off the charts.
10 out of 10.
And the perceived safety. And it is into this psychological gap that Wallace Hartley steps.
Let's talk about him for a second. Let's profile him, because he often just gets reduced to the band leader.
The two-dimensional figure in a tuxedo, yeah. Who is this guy?
Wallace Hartley, 33 years old, a violinist. And he wasn't just some guy they picked up at the dock. He was a seasoned professional. He'd played on the Mauretania and the Lusitania.
The big ships.
He knew the Atlantic run intimately.
And there's a detail in his biography that really just twists the knife for me. He was engaged to be married.
Maria Robinson. They were planning to marry that summer. And this is so crucial because it just dispels the myth that he had nothing to live for.
He wasn't some lonely man.
Not at all. He had a very specific, happy future waiting for him back in England. He had every reason in the world to want to get on a boat.
And yet when the collision happens, he rounds up his team. Now, I want to clarify something here because this blew my mind when I read it in the source. They weren't technically White Star Line crew, were they?
No, and this is a massive point when you think about their motivation. They were contracted through a music agency in Liverpool. They were, for all intents and purposes, gig workers.
They were listed as second-class passengers on the manifest.
That's right. So legally, they had even less obligation than a steward or a sailor.
They didn't take an oath to the ship.
Precisely. In a legal sense, the moment the ship hit the iceberg, their contract was effectively void. No one held a gun to their heads. No officer ordered them to the deck.
They could have done what a lot of other men did. Run to their cabins, grab a coat, and try to find a way onto a boat.
But they didn't. They met in the first-class lounge. They unpacked their instruments.
Violins, a cello, a double bass. And think about the logistics of that for a second. It's freezing.
Cold is the enemy of a string player. Your fingers stiffen up, you lose dexterity. The wood of the instrument reacts, the strings go flat.
So just physically playing was a struggle. They're fighting their own instruments from the start.
It would have been incredibly difficult just to stay in tune, but they start playing. And this is what we can call phase one of the night.
The denial phase.
Exactly.
And the repertoire here is just fascinating. They didn't start with sad music. They didn't start with hymns.
No. God, no. That would have caused a panic immediately. They played ragtime. They played waltzes. Alexander's ragtime band.
Upbeat, happy music.
Upbeat, syncopated, energetic music.
So what's the psychological function of that? Is it just a distraction? Look over here, ignore the water.
Well, it's deeper than just distraction. It's about a concept called entrainment. Our bodies and our brains naturally sync up to external rhythms.
Oh, interesting.
If you hear a fast, happy beat, it creates a physiological response. It actually fights the freeze response of fear.
So they were chemically altering the mood of the crowd with music.
In a way, yes. They were building an auditory wall against reality. As long as the band is playing a toe-tapping number, the ship can't really be sinking, right?
It maintains the social contract. People see the band playing and they think, oh, it must be a drill, an inconvenience. If it were serious, they wouldn't be playing ragtime.
Exactly. And it worked. One survivor mentioned seeing people actually dancing on the deck while the water was rising below them.
That's cognitive dissonance in its purest form.
It really is. Your eyes see the lifeboats being uncovered, which is scary, but your ears hear a party. And the brain, well, the brain prefers the story told by the ears because it's less terrifying.
It lets you stay in that warm bubble of denial for just a little bit longer.
A little bit longer. But eventually, physics wins. You can't ragtime your way out of a sinking ship.
Right. So the tide turns around, what, 12:45 a.m.?
Around then, yeah. The first lifeboats are lowering. The distress rockets are firing, which are incredibly loud, terrifying booms. These aren't fireworks.
And the deck begins to tilt noticeably.
This is the moment where the gig should be over. The denial is gone. Panic is starting to set in. The crowd isn't dancing anymore.
The shoving.
The illusion of safety shatters. And this is the critical decision point for Hartley and his men.
Yeah.
The crowd control theory doesn't work as well anymore. The logical move, the survivalist move, is to pack up and fight for a spot.
But they don't stop. They actually move, right?
They do. They move from the lounge out onto the open boat deck, into the freezing cold. And this is significant because outside, the acoustics are worse. The sound just gets lost in the wind, but the visibility is higher.
They wanted to be seen.
They wanted to be seen and heard by the maximum number of people.
And the playlist changes.
It has to. You can't play happy ragtime when people are screaming for their lives. It becomes grotesque. It's a mockery. So they shift from entertainment to, well, spiritual sustenance.
The sources describe the scene as just getting chaotic. People realizing there aren't enough boats, husbands being separated from wives. The sound of the steam escaping the funnels was apparently deafening.
A roar, they called it. And yet survivors talk about the music cutting through that roar. This is where the band really acts as an anchor. When human behavior descends into chaos, pushing, shoving, screaming, music is structured.
It has rules.
It has rules, rhythm, melody, harmony. It's a tiny island of order in a completely chaotic ocean.
There's this specific quote from a survivor that really stuck with me. The music was not loud, but it was brave.
That's a heavy statement, isn't it? It implies the act of playing was a form of defiance. It was them looking death in the face and saying, "We will maintain our dignity."
And it gave the passengers permission to be brave, too.
I think so. It's almost like social proof. If those guys can stand there and play the cello, maybe I can stand here and wait for the boat without trampling my neighbor.
It suppressed the animal instinct.
For a little while, yes. It likely saved lives, not by pulling people out of the water, but by preventing a deadly crush on the deck. It kept the process orderly for just a few minutes longer.
Okay, let's talk about the end, the final anthem. Because there's a lot of debate here, isn't there?
A massive historical debate. The legend, and, the movie version, says they played Nearer My God to Thee.
It's the perfect narrative ending.
It is. But some historians and other witnesses argue it might have been a waltz called Songe d'automne.
Autumn Dream.
Right.
I feel like we get hung up on the track list sometimes and we miss the point. Does it really matter which song it was?
Historically. For accuracy, maybe. But psychologically, not at all. Whether it was Nearer My God to Thee or a melancholic waltz, the function was the same. It was a funeral rite.
They were performing their own last rites.
And the rites of everyone else left on that ship. By playing a hymn or a slow, somber waltz, they were signaling acceptance. They were communicating. The time for running is over. The time for making peace is now.
And the image of that final moment it's harrowing. The ship is at a steep angle, the lights are flickering, then they fail completely.
Pitch black.
The stern is rising out of the water, people are sliding down the deck.
And the music finally stops, not because they quit, but because they physically couldn't stand anymore. The water just swallows the band. Wallace Hartley and all 7 of his band members died. Not a single one survived.
Which is statistically wild, isn't it? Even Third Class Man had a slight survival rate. The crew had a better rate.
It suggests they stayed at their posts until it was physically impossible to escape. They played until the ship broke apart.
So fast forward a few weeks, they recover Hartley's body from the ocean.
And this part of the story, I think, really shows the impact they had. They brought him back to his hometown in England, Cole.
Then 30,000 people lined the streets for his funeral.
30,000 for a violin player.
Why? Why do you think he struck such a nerve? We had captains and millionaires and inventors on that ship. Why did the public latch on to the band?
I think it comes down to how we define heroism. Usually a hero is someone who changes the outcome,
They defuse the bomb, they land the plane.
They kill the bad guy. They fix the problem.
Hartley changed nothing about the outcome. The ship still sank, the people still died.
Exactly. In a purely utilitarian sense, his actions were useless. But that is precisely why it resonates so deeply. It was pure altruism. It was heroism of manner, not of result. He showed us how to face the inevitable with grace.
Courage over survival.
That's the phrase. Biology tells us to survive at all costs. Kick, scream, fight. But humanity tells us that how we live and die matters more than just breathing. Hartley represented the triumph of the human spirit over the biological imperative. He chose who he wanted to be in his final moments.
It's interesting you mention that because the source material really poses a direct challenge to the reader. It asks, what would you do?
It's the uncomfortable question, isn't it? We all like to think, I'd be brave. I'd give up my seat in the lifeboat. I'd play the violin.
But realistically, I think I'd probably be trying to find a piece of driftwood. Or hiding in a cupboard.
Most of us would. Panic is a powerful drug. It overrides logic. And that's what makes Hartley's composure so alien and so attractive to us. He had a kind of self-control that we envy.
So, to bring this all back to our listeners today, most of us, thankfully, will never be on a sinking ocean liner in the North Atlantic.
Hopefully not.
But the metaphor of the sinking ship is universal. Companies fail, diagnoses come back bad, relationships end. We all face these moments where the outcome is no longer in our control.
That's where the concept of playing the violin becomes a practical tool for modern life. It stops being a history lesson and it starts being a strategy.
When you can't save the ship, what's your violin?
Exactly. What is the thing you can do to bring some order or some comfort to the people around you? If your team at work is being laid off and you can't stop it, The ship is sinking.
Do you panic and spread rumors and fear?
Or do you help your colleagues update their resumes? Do you try to keep morale up until the last day? That's playing the violin.
That's a great example. It's about dignifying the process, even if the result is bad.
If a crisis hits your family, do you add to the chaos with your own anxiety, or do you become the emotional anchor that helps stabilize the room?
It's about locating your agency. You can't control the iceberg. You can't control the water rising. You can only control your reaction. You can choose to be a source of calm.
And it reframes the whole idea of useless actions. Just because you can't fix the problem doesn't mean your contribution is meaningless.
The survivors of the Titanic remembered that music for the rest of their lives. It didn't save their bodies, but it might have saved their minds. And that is never meaningless.
Precisely. Wallace Hartley, the gig worker, who decided his job wasn't done just because the ship was dying. It's a haunting story, but I think it gives us a standard to aim for.
A very high standard, but a necessary one.
Absolutely.
So as you go about your week, maybe facing your own mini icebergs, ask yourself, what's my instrument? And am I brave enough to play it?
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive. Stay curious.